There is no doubt that Where Winds Meet is incredibly successful. It's a game that's rocking a very positive on Steam after 104,000 reviews, and before you say anything, 58,000 of those are in English, so this isn't the case of the game only appeals to people in its home country of China. But what I find even more intriguing about Where Winds Meet is that it's trying to do something unique, not just with its gameplay, but with its business model. So when Everstone Studio approached me to sponsor a video, I took it as an opportunity to take those free-to-play claims and how unique the game is to test. More on how exactly the sponsor affects this video in a little bit. Now, the curious part about Where Winds Meet is that it is a free-to-play, technically live service game and that it's constantly receiving updates, but it's not multiplayer focused. It's also not a gacha game. It's just an open world action RPG that happens to have no price of admission. Now, of course, there is monetization, some of it good, some of it not as good, but the promise has always been that that monetization is only cosmetic. It's not just that there's no pay to win, it's that there is no gameplay being gated behind money. Neither its combat, nor its raids, nor its surprisingly really well done exploration, or its myriad, and I mean myriad, of wacky one-off encounters, none of that is gated behind you spending money, which is kind of crazy, but from the outside seems to be true, because the game isn't just doing well, but they're pumping out that content, including their new massive Hexi expansion, which officially introduces the third zone of the game, the whole rollout going out through the next couple of months, which adds a ton of new storylines and quests and things to do in the game. Now, the premise of this video is me going into this game as a new player, checking it out, seeing what's good about it, seeing what's not as good about it, and also judging those claims of completely free to play and what's the quality on offer here. Just because it's a sponsored video doesn't mean that I can't bring up criticisms. Quite the opposite, they want me to paint a picture to you guys of if this game is actually interesting to you, not for people to go play it and then feel bamboozled. Now, but because it is a sponsored video, they do want me to read out about this new expansion that's super cool, and let me check here. Includes 3 new large-scale maps with 20 plus subregions and 11 plus brand new bosses. The massive new desert region of the Jade Gate Pass, along with new martial art styles, the Bamboo Cut, which combines the umbrella and the rope dart, and you can test those out on the new bosses. Bosses like Guo Xin and the Wayward Boat, along with a ton of other new stuff and a ton of rewards for both new and veteran players. What does all of that I just read you mean? Well, if you know, you know, and if you don't worry, I didn't either, but now I do. Well, I know a bit. I put 30 hours into the game and there's still way too many things for me to explore, but I get it now. So with my fascination surrounding this game right there, and the game promising to be free while offering a complete single-player experience, I jumped in order to answer a series of questions. Number 1, what is this game even? Number 2, how is the combat and progression? Number 3, how's the monetization? Number 4, is the game fun? And number 5, is this game for you? Also, this is a blank napkin. And I'm going to answer all of those questions. And if you don't play Where Winds Meet, and if you've been even remotely curious about it, trust me, if it's probably going to be like me, you're going to be pretty surprised. And by the way, hi, I'm Mug. And if you're new here, welcome. And if you're not, welcome back. And you are looking fantastic. Of course, because it is sponsored, take it with a bit of an extra grain of salt on top of the usual grains of salt that I recommend. But hitting the like button on a video like this helps a ton, because it not only allows the channel to get more sponsorships, but it shows the companies that sponsor that there can be very forthright and transparent videos even when it is sponsored. And trust me, if you don't know what Where Winds Meet is, you're going to be surprised. So let's get into it. One of the most interesting parts about Where Winds Meet is that it's kind of hard to describe. Sure, you can say that it's an open world action RPG, but I've also seen a lot of people describe it as kind of an MMO light, which I find confusing because there's not much multiplayer and definitely no massiveness going on. Some other people will compare it to gacha games, and some people will compare it to Ghost of Tsushima. And it's none of those things and also a bit of them. The truth is that this is closer to a blend of Assassin's Creed with some elements of Tsushima or Yote. But it has a bit of the trappings of some of the gacha games from the East on that front, but it has much more robust mechanics and especially much more robust combat. The game has online features you can opt to, including social spaces, but they're more for fun, for like showing off and doing dumb stuff, not for actually playing the game and progressing. However, there is actual instanced multiplayer that you can go do, with bosses that kind of act as small raids with mechanics to get through, and that focus more on you choosing a bit of a class between tank, healer, and DPS. But they are for fun and farming, and not for progression of the game necessarily. So needless to say, there's a lot going on, but the easiest picture to paint is to explain the actual game as it goes. As soon as you start the game and you create your character, which yes, it does have a crazy character creator that allows you to upload a picture. I did not find the most success with it. This is what I look like. According to the picture, you can tell me if it worked out. And once you get through the main plot points at the start of the game is divided into different large regions that have main stories to them, as well as a ton of secondary stories. These are all kind of self-contained, so you can jump between them whenever you want, and that bodes well for the future of the game. If it's going to have 6 or 7 regions in the future, you can just kind of go to whichever one you like the most. It's horizontal progression, not vertical. Once you go into a region or a sub-region, you will be exploring it, finding different quests to pick up, or going for the main story quests, and through that you'll be solving small puzzles and mostly doing a lot of combat. Now, one of the more important questions the game asks you early on, and it's a very telling question, it'll ask you how you want your exploration and combat experiences to be. Whether you want basically everything to be marked on the map and for the game to kind of hold you by the hand and take you to everything, or if you want to more organically discover the map by just walking around. And with combat at the lower difficulties, it'll even just stop time for you to parry at the cost of resources, but I did not go with that. I wouldn't recommend that to anybody either. Have fun with actually parrying. Trust me, the combat's pretty good. You're gonna want to actually play the game. The interesting thing is that the game doesn't care about what you choose. The game wants you to enjoy it. So if you're here for the wacky stories, then, you know, you can turn the combat down. If you're here because you want to memorize some really good bosses and kind of perfect them, get to know all of their attacks and how to dodge them and what you can fit between their attacks and all that sort of combat stuff, you can go for it. And if you don't like that, well, you can just turn it down. There are, of course, achievements and like special things that don't let you use lower difficulty, but it does let you customize the game to whatever you want, which is like a very honest foot forward right at the start. And that's because even though most of Where Winds Meet is running towards the main marker, watching some cutscenes, some dialogue, and then fighting stuff, a lot of the magic of Where Winds Meet is actually in the exploration. And it's very chaotic exploration in a good way. It's chaotic because you don't know what's going to happen next. You might end up in fishing competitions or playing mahjong for an hour. You might be playing the deck building minigame where you build a deck in order to convince people of things in arguments, and you can collect cards to build out that deck, kind of like Gwent, but for playable speech checks. It's weird. Or you might turn into a horse or a dog, or you might, who knows what could happen. You can never expect what's coming next. But the important part about it is that it all feels very rewarding. Like I mentioned before, you could get cards for the speech check deck building mini game, but more often than not, what you're going to get are abilities. You see, most if not all of your abilities don't come from you leveling up, but from completing quests. Sometimes you'll stumble onto an animal doing a thing in the wild, and that'll inspire you to study them, and suddenly you'll learn how to do a new move. This is in the form of a mini game where you time button presses. That's not very impressive, but the fun part is how you learn the ability. Other times, abilities are rewarded at the end of side quests, sometimes lengthy side quest chains. Sometimes there's multiple ways to unlock them, including the ability to sneak into different sects, different factions, and doing like a long stealth mission and spying on them to learn their combat style. And while there is a lot to just stumble upon and have fun and be like, oh wow, I learned all these new cool abilities by just walking around and engaging with stuff, if you ever really want to get something done, odds are that you're going to open the map and it'll tell you that you require a certain ability for it, and then it'll point you in the right direction for the side quest chain to unlock that ability. And that's how a lot of this goes. You'll stumble onto things that you'll want to complete in order to unlock cool abilities that you think will fit with your build, your combat, or even for puzzle solving and interactions in quests. But then those will have prerequisites that'll send you in a different direction, and when you go do that quest, you'll end up talking to a fox about how you want to wield an umbrella. Really simple example, when you reach the second area, I guess, Kaifeng, you can encounter a water buffalo in the middle of the road that refuses to get up, and that is like a quest line that you can start, but you need the ability to talk to the water buffalo so that you can argue it into getting up. And if you can't talk to animals yet, it'll point you to where you should go to learn to talk to animals. That's a sentence. Suffice to say, for me, the coolest part of Where Winds Meet is that exploration. Is just the funny things that happen along the way. A lot of the presentation of the side quests and a lot of the humor really landed for me. I can't say I found every moment of the main story that I went through, which is most of the main story in all of the 3 regions at the moment. I didn't find it amazing. I would say half and half. I really like some of the action sequences, like the choreography of a lot of the cutscenes is really good, and the boss fights are just spectacular. Both visually and to learn and like fight them, it's very fun. And I do think that generally the English localization, at least in voice acting, is pretty good. There's some weird stuff in writing from time to time, but the performances I generally found above average. And that to me is really what makes this game stand out. It's that you can just run around this world and encounter a lot of different events and fun side quests, fun things that are happening. That often reminded me of like Yakuza energy, of the absurdity of some of the side stories, the intentional comedy of it, sometimes just visual gags, sometimes playing on the idea of them being a side quest, and you just encounter these things. And it's very easy to get swept up in, I'm going to check all the boxes of this region, I'm going to get 100% exploration, because you'll be driven by a tiny little thing on the map of like a collectible you can pick up and start a conversation with somebody, something unmarked on the map that leads you to a bunch of other stuff, and it's all peppered throughout, and it's very, very well done. But wait, so give me a second. If exploration is the way that you obtain abilities, how does combat and progression work then? Well, like I said, a lot of your progression is tied to exploration, which is my jam. I like that a lot, but you will be fighting a lot in this game. And the fighting here is pretty good. I wouldn't say it's top tier, but it's maybe a tier below top. And part of that is because it's fairly unique. It feels like a little bit of a blend between a Souls-like, very little of that influence, but a little bit of it, and a character action game. If I had to cite one game that kind of strikes that same tone, I would compare it to Wu Chang Fallen Feathers. The game is generally quicker and lighter than most Souls-likes. There's a lot more aerial stuff and flashy attacks that you can chain, especially between light and heavy moves, and you can also do some charged heavy attacks. And it also relies heavily on your abilities, which is where more of the Souls-like thing comes in with a bit of resource management. Every weapon style, which are called martial arts, has 2 signature abilities that are performed by pressing left trigger and then light or heavy attack, which are X and Y, or I guess square and triangle. And then by holding down the right trigger, you have access to 4 different mystic abilities on the face buttons and 4 of them on the D-pad that you can kind of deploy at any point during the fight. However, these are gated by resources, including stamina for a lot of stuff. Your basic attacks, for example, don't cost anything, but heavy attacks and a lot of those signature attacks might cost stamina. There might be other ways to recover it or to get more energy, but it is surprisingly complex and fun. I feel like there's also a very good curve here where you will feel like it's relatively demanding to take out bosses willy-nilly, and if you wanted to challenge them in a more difficult variation, which you can do, you really need to think hard about what abilities you're going to use and what's going to be best against the boss. And from what I understand, because even after 30 hours I didn't get there, when it comes to raid mechanics and some of the multiplayer bosses, you really need to learn their patterns and their mechanics to know what to do in order to take them down. As a general feel though, I think Wu Chang is a good comparison. This game is very immediate. You can cancel out of any combo and any ability straight into a parry or straight into a dodge. It's very fast, and there is a decent amount of buildcraft to it, which is where some of the negatives really start. Your martial arts are kind of classified into typical MMO archetypes of melee DPS, tank, range DPS, and healer. And you always have 2 weapons equipped, and they can be of any different class. So for example, I spent a while with the big sword, which basically lets you use its signature abilities to give you a big shield and then to also improve your focus. And you can then use those buffs and immediately swap to your other weapon, which is maybe more DPS focused. A lot of it has to do with the skills they have in order to fulfill a role in battle. And a lot of your martial arts actually have way more progression to them than you might think. And this is the one part that maybe I don't like as much. Now, to be fair, you don't have to engage with the complexities of these systems unless you're pretty much at endgame. You're doing the repeatable activities, the multiplayer raids, and stuff like that. In a general playthrough, I didn't really have much need for them. But there is a pretty large menu to get through when it comes to, oh, now I want to upgrade my weapon type. Now I want to upgrade the abilities of that weapon. And now I want to upgrade maybe the passives that I can equip from the inner way to my weapons, which you can equip 4 different passives. And each of the passives that you equip have their own tiny skill trees with their own requirements of different items that you have to go collect in order to upgrade. And that's where it kind of reminds me of gacha games, of just this mess of menus and menus and menus with different resources that you have to get in order to upgrade each different part. It reminds of it, but that doesn't mean it is. It's not like you're trying to roll on duplicates of a weapon to upgrade it or anything. No, you upgrade by just completing quests, and at most difficult by doing your repeatable daily like boss missions that you can do, or your daily attempts to complete multiplayer raids. And those will reward you with those upgrade things. And there is actually really no way to like pay for them. This is where it starts to feel more like an MMO. You can't just empty your wallet to upgrade all of your passives or something. You have to grind for them at endgame. And that is the only part, by the way, where there's like a cap on gameplay, which is you have a certain amount of energy to claim rewards from your daily events that you have to wait for it to fill up again. But at no point in the rest of the game are you ever limited by an energy system or anything that you would imagine from like a gacha game. You can just play the whole game. I played 30 hours of it pretty much straight. So a lot of the daily like grind is saved for late game, where you kind of want to do this repeatable content and really perfect your build or do these multiplayer raids and really gear up for endgame. But there is no purpose to endgame beyond being at endgame and like experiencing some of that content. But like zones scale to your level, and with every update they're putting out more levels. And if you're here for like the story and the spectacular bosses, you'll always be able to do them. And in years time, when the game has a ton more regions to explore and weird quests to do, you'll do those. So that is confusing to me, and I also think the menuing of it makes it a lot more intimidating than it is, because it looks like it would work like a lot of gacha games do, but it doesn't. It works much more like an MMO does. And I'll be honest, it felt pretty good. Like, I like what I saw in terms of how this is done and the repeatable content, and I think that a lot of people have very good things to say about that raid content and those fights, and about repeating those legendary fights and doing them harder and harder, and really mastering each weapon of the tons of different weapon types there are, and figuring out how you want to play, or even the satisfaction of fulfilling a role as a tank or a healer or a DPS during a raid. And it's cool that it's there. It's just like there's a lot of stuff in the game. I might be making it sound more complicated than it is. There's an open world action RPG part with cool stories and fights. And then once you finish all of that, if you wanted to do daily combat challenges while you also maybe finish your exploration of the map in order to get your super ability to fly all over it. But I feel like those are more for people who just really enjoy the game than because it's the meat of the game, if that makes sense. To me, the meat is in the exploration and the kooky events that you encounter. Okay, so what about monetization? This is one of the really interesting parts about this, that this game claims to be completely free, and from everything I've told you so far, it is completely free. But that can't be real. A game can't exist without making money, because developers need to be paid and exist. Video game developers can't live off of air. Well, there's good and bad news. The bad news is that it's in the cosmetics. The good news is that there's also a fairly decent amount of cosmetics, even if you don't put a penny into the game. And that there's also some pretty decently priced options, including battle passes between, $10 to $20, depending on the version of it. That'll get you some cool stuff and some cool rewards that you can exchange for some cosmetics and come with certain cosmetics for the current season's battle pass or whatever. Which I think is a fair trade, considering that the game is completely free. I have very different standards for monetization when a game is free than when it's paid for. I don't think that's surprising. I don't judge a $40 multiplayer game charging me $20 for a skin the same way that I do Where Winds Meet, which is completely free, charging me maybe $10 for a skin, which I think is completely okay. Especially given the fact that they are pretty generous in like actual outfits that you can chase by like doing completionist quests or by fully completing certain quest lines or certain faction quest lines, exploration stuff. You can get some pretty cool looking cosmetics, nothing as crazy as the exclusive gacha cosmetics, but there is, if you are aesthetically inclined, there is stuff to chase, which is cool because I get to chase cosmetics without actually putting in any money. That's great. However, if you're looking for those crazy costumes, the absolute game changers, even stuff like weapon effects or certain abilities having different effects, you're going to probably have to spend money, and it's going to be in the gacha banner pull variety of it. There are cosmetic banners where you can get some really cool flashy stuff. However, I'm not kidding when I say this, with the percentages of getting these, as far as I'm aware, only currency driven rolls and the pity system they use, it can cost people upwards of $30,000 to $50,000 to get the flagship banner cosmetic, which is crazy. That's a very large amount of money. And that's obviously geared towards the heavy spenders. That's people who are really invested and they want to drop that sort of money on this game. And I'm not really going to complain about it. The only parts of this game that are really monetized are the cosmetics. I've dug deep online to check if like there is any pay to win. And there seems like there's some very small advantages that you can get from like the battle pass, which again is like the cheapest option that lets you maybe like retry boss battles for your dailies a couple more times than normal. But really there is no gated content for money. You're never like, oh, I need to roll on this banner to get this new weapon that looks super cool or is overpowered or something in this, primarily single player PvE game. It's just these costumes. And I'm kind of all right with that because there's a lot of other costumes. There are options for people who don't want to spend incredibly large amounts of money on it. And I think that's a pretty brilliant business model. It also helps in not bogging the game down because you're not looking at tons and tons of menus of different banners to roll on weapons or martial arts or whatever. That's not there. You're just rolling on cosmetics if you want them, and you can know for a fact that even when the menus get a bit convoluted and a bit gacha-y, when it comes to upgrading your character, you just have to play the game to get that. You and everybody else. So I have to respect the commitment here from the developers. They want to convince people to spend money on the game because they made a good game that people like to spend time on, instead of making a game that requires you to spend money on it to enjoy it. Now, it's not teasing you with some cool stuff and then saying, hey, if you put in more money, you'll have more options or more things to do, or you'll be able to get rid of your stamina system, your energy system, so that you can play more. Nothing like that. They're saying, hey, here's this entire storylines, all of these side quests, all of these things to unlock. Go have fun. And if at some point you feel like you want to give us money for some of this stuff, go ahead. And I really believe that's an admirable approach to free to play. Just to be very clear, I put 30 hours into this game. I never once felt like it was pushing me towards spending money on a seasonal banner or anything. I never felt like I needed to do anything. The only reason I have not played more Where Winds Meet is because I have to get this video out, because I was very happy playing more of it and just going through the story. It was pretty chill and I was having a good time. And never once did I feel like this game required money to feel complete. And that is truly impressive. Now, fourth question, is the game fun? I mean, yeah. Its exploration is rewarding, and it's really like rivaling AAA games. Some of the sequences of the story, some of the cutscenes I've been showing you even, are really funny and like genuinely made me laugh and made me smile in a way that like isn't the most common. I'll do that more with like JRPGs or with, Yakuza is a really good contrast point for this game. I think there's a lot of that DNA there kind of, but its exploration is very easygoing, dynamic, and rewarding, and that's impressive. The combat stands pretty tall next to a lot of action games. It's not the peak of it, but it's good enough and pretty damn excellent when it comes to the design of some of the bosses are just really good. And its quests, they can be uneven in quality. It has some weird stuff with localization, although again, I think most of the English localization is fine from what I experienced, especially the dub. Played the game in English and that was pretty good. But those quests, even when they are uneven in quality, are regularly surprising in ways that keep it fun because you really want to see what's next. So in many ways, I feel like Where Winds Meet isn't at the top of their game in pretty much any regard, but there's also very few games that are trying to do as many things at the same time that it's doing. The tons of different mini games and funny one-off sections that happen, the side quests, the exploration, the combat, be that like gauntlet combat or boss rush stuff, or even the raid stuff that I didn't get to experience. It's cramming a lot of stuff in there in ways that feel well, and despite the rough edges on stuff like UI and menus that I think could be sorted out over time, the fact that you get all of that to a degree that is maybe a bit below the top that you could find for free is pretty crazy. And that for me is the kicker. There is no paywall, no subscription, no premium purchase, no nothing. Sure, there's a ton of cosmetics, but I think that's a fair trade, even if some people might look at the prices of like the seasonal banners and say that's crazy. I'm not here to review this game for the people willing to spend $40,000 on it. I'm here to review it for the average person that's considering if it's going to be worth their time and worth maybe those $10 or $20 of a battle pass every now and then when they're invested in the new update or something. Which leads me to the final question, is this game for you? And to be honest, if you liked the Assassin's Creed RPG trilogy, or even the Ghost games, Yotei and Tsushima, or if you're a big fan of Souls-like, but you would like your Souls-like to have faster combat and Yakuza-level zaniness of side quests in it, you really should try out Where Winds Meet. It's free. It's crazy. It feels like a game that's aiming for the top of AAA in like 4 different categories, and it falls just short on all 4 of them. But the breadth of what's on offer and the price tag, it's hard to beat. It really does bring forth a lot of my favorite things about like good exploration moments in Assassin's Creed RPGs or in the Ghost games of just wandering around and encountering cool, wacky stuff as you go. And I think that the potential of it being a live service game that's just going to have more and more regions with that horizontal progression over time means that it could be even better in a couple of years' time. And I'm interested to see where it goes. I had a really good time playing it, and I hope that paid off into a video that you guys feel is fair in how it presents the game and what it is. And if you think that's the case, remember to hit the like button. And of course, they want me to remind you that Where Winds Meet is a living game, and this Hexy Super expansion is just getting started. On April 2nd, you can access Liangzhou, which is the first snow region in the game, and it comes along with the new Heng Blade, a brand new weapon that's defined by its elegance and its precision. All of this along with 5 new bosses, some of them being for the main story, some being world bosses, and new campaigns, which are those repeatable quests for endgame that you keep doing to get all your mats and get your character to the current level cap. And the game is available on PlayStation 5, PC, and mobile. The download link is right here, right down here. Go there and click that and you can go to Steam and play the game. It's on Steam, it's free, you know what to do. So, 2 extra special thanks. Number 1, of course, thank you to Everstone Studios for approaching me to do this. It was a great opportunity for me to check this out. So many people had already talked about this game. So many people have played it and they had very good things to say. I got to check it out on my own and tell you what I think about it, but they sponsored it. So it's awesome when that sort of stuff happens, when a game that I'm very interested in, regardless, that like I obviously vet sponsors before they come on board. So I know that it's a game I'm going to like or generally is going to be up my alley. And this was one of those cases where it's like a win-win because I knew beforehand that it was probably going to be for me. And I feel like it really is. It's really good. And another extra special thanks to the members of The Wall, be they members here on YouTube or on Patreon. These are the people who directly support what I do, and I am grateful for that support every single day. I've been Mug. Hope this video was useful to you, and I'll see you again very soon.